I'm here today with Franco Chiricella, the president and CEO of NovaPost. Now, NovaPost is a unique company, and not a lot of people may know about it, but it plays an important role in Canadian business. It has elements of both public and private sector, and it's felt the demands from the pandemic from the point of view of its customers and its employees, just like many of us, but in some other ways as well. Franco, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Jim.
Nice to meet you. Can you give me a little background on a NovaPost and describe it just for our audience?
Sure. NovaPost is the IT shared services for the Canada Post group of companies that supports Canada Post, Purolator, and SCI Logistics. We predominantly support Canada Post, but provide IT services nonetheless for all three of the organizations. We were founded in 2002, believe it or not, already coming up on 20 years. Really back when, shared services model, particularly in the public sector, were quite common to sort of pool the IT demands of like member companies and try to deliver, efficient and more ideally, really effective IT for the entire group. And it's had and continues to have a great run, leading to, Canada Post being a very large player in the e-commerce business, complemented by Purolator, who is as well, and SCI, who, has carved out quite a strong business in the logistics space. And so we're very proud to be a critical part of those member companies. No more so than what we've observed the last couple of years through the pandemic.
Yeah. And now NovaPost has been pursuing a transformation agenda for a few years now. In there prior to the pandemic and then the explosion in e-commerce that resulted from that. What was driving that initial change?
Despite all the positives I shared just in the previous question, one of the challenges a little bit is that we do operate as a separate subsidiary. And at times, that separation can cause a bit of a gap, a bit of a divide, right? And I think for a few too many years, NovaPost focused more on technology than the outcomes of those technology decisions or work, right? We've started to use a saying now a little bit where we say, we should be just as excited about getting parcels delivered as we are about deploying new technology. And really what that means is when there was a bit of a more proximity from the business than we should have had, you tend to focus more inwardly and more on the technology and the business of running technology versus on how do we help our member companies achieve their goals, such as being an e-commerce leader. And so, that situation was a catalyst to saying, we need to be better aligned with the business, both in our objectives and our strategic goals, but also in how we operate, and from all the way from how we procure products to how we develop software, and essentially everything in between.
Yeah. So, what did the change entail? Well, how did you go about it?
Well, first and foremost, started with our entire leadership structure. And from there, every leader had their own transformational mandate from, changing our HR structure, how we recruit, how we retain talent, our focus on training. But probably one of the core things was moving from a waterfall pool-based development shop to a true product-based agile one. That was basically the core that influenced everything else, and arguably one of the more disruptive and tough ones to do. But it's the one that we are seeing now as we emerge through it, where we truly have derived most of the benefit, or the benefit that was intended.
So let's talk about Agile and what we mean by it. There are lots of definitions of Agile. I'm sure how would you describe it? And how's that work? How's the work at NovaPost been different as a result?
So I would define agile in really two different ways. The first one is being structured in a way that you can deliver features to market faster, fundamentally, full stop. That should be the goal of agile. And there's a whole methodology, all methodologies that you follow in how you work more closely with the business and how you break down requirements and you feed those to the product teams, you make those autonomous teams, and you set them up to deliver software faster. That's agility. That's the first definition. The other one is about architecting your landscape. You're essentially architecting solutions, not only for what the business is currently aspiring to do, but for things that they have not yet thought of. And that's really making sure that we're building architecture that's more modular, more, you hear the term Lego based, right? More modular, more platform types technologies. Now, granted, if it's in a completely different area, then that's one thing. But if it's on the peripheral of ideas that they're at, the best that you can do to anticipate gives you the ability to build off stuff that's already been built. And that also gives you a degree of agility.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say we moved from waterfall to agile, but this is a big shop. I mean, this is no small feat. How did you deal with that transformation?
So we were fortunate that we had, I would say, a bit of a incubation team for a few years before we started the transformation that had about 4 or 5 teams that were running agile. And they did quite well, but they were literally in the basement of a different building and doing that sort of skunk works type of stuff. And they really displayed the true value and the power of what Agile can bring. And so with that as a proof point, we slowly rolled it out. And when I say slowly, it probably took us about 2 years to deploy it to all of our about 65 to 70 product teams. And so that's where we are in our journey now. We've deployed this agile methodology across all our product teams, and they're all implemented.
Yeah. Now you said deploying technology versus having customer focused delivery solutions, and that's the hardest thing in the world to explain, I think, to an employee group. How do you describe it, and how has that changed things?
Well, in the first iteration of our journey, we defined product teams as we group people around like technologies that provided similar capabilities. So you could argue that first iteration was more about technology, right? You were on this product team because this product team was all Java, right? Or you were on this product team because all this product team focused on shipping tools. That brought us along that change curve and alignment with the business. Great. And I think that journey needed to happen. The next journey that we're getting to, which we see in the large organizations, right? You can't help but look at the Netflixes and the Amazons as an example, where they truly structure teams around products. And by products, I mean an individual product that then you can incent people on the team for the performance of that product, right? You always hear, the stories about how there was a product team that was on Gmail, right? Just using a real example, right? And then those people are fundamentally incented, right? Their pay and bonus and so on and so forth is driven by the performance of that product, that capability. And that's where a little bit we aspire to be, because, certainly for Canada Post, we want to really focus on small and medium-sized businesses. And in saying that, unique capabilities and offerings are going to be key. And so we think that might be the catalyst that helps us get us to that, a mix that allows us to compete that much more, structuring like that, really truly going by product, so that everybody on that team, from the product owner to the developer to the tester to the scrum master, gets jazzed about the performance of the product, the Gmail in that case.
Yeah, great idea in there. So having gone through all that, in 2022, you've announced another set of change priorities, which are equally ambitious. What are these, and why do you need them now?
Um, so in a few years ago, we created a playbook, which was a series of, well, there are four pillars of our playbook, and they're focused on people and stability and working with the business and value. The significance of this playbook was, for the first time, it allowed us to, rather than and I don't know how many other companies are like this. Maybe we were the only one, but we tend to do our annual planning cycle every year, and then that was our planning for the year. We didn't really think too many years out, and so this playbook activity was a fantastic activity in that we would say, okay, in stability, we are at 99.6% stability now. How do we get to 5 nines? And that's a multi-year journey. And so the playbook allowed us to think 3, 5, 7, 10 years out and say, okay, if we want to be 5 nines by year 7, what are the initiatives we need to put in place from now till then to get to 5 nines? So this was this playbook activity, which was, I would say, a game changer for us. It represented the basis of the transformation and allows us to be far more strategic and so on and so forth. Now, with that anchor document that lives for 5, 7, 10 years, every year you sort of pull out of that playbook to say, okay, what in 2022 now, referencing the playbook, what in 2022 do we need to focus on to support those objectives that we talked about that are some 3, 4, 5 years out? And we came up with 6 key objectives in 2022. And they're not anything radical. I would say they're all very much aligned to the times we're in, and they're aligned to our playbook. And so far, it's still relatively early in the year, but they seem to have really helped the organization dial in quite well. And I'm really pleased at the progress we've made already in the first quarter and some in 2022.
A lot of companies are also taking this opportunity or taking this challenge to really accelerate their move into the cloud. Is that been something you've been thinking through?
Yes, we started our cloud initiative in, I want to say, late 2020. We have a fairly large, expansive landscape, some 1,400 servers in our physical data center, and we just needed to look at strategically how do we do that. And so we pivoted a little and developed what we call a cloud smart approach. Which means ultimately we are aligned with the market. Ultimately, we see that the vast majority of our footprint will migrate to the cloud, but we'll move them in tranches that make sense, that add business value, right? And at a pace that doesn't add risk to the business, but also doesn't consume resources to a point where I can't do anything else. As you can imagine, just how I described that took a little bit of finessing to figure out the right strategy. But I'm quite pleased that we believe we've landed on that, and that's the one we're executing now.
That's great. So what have you learned other than those parts? What have you learned from your journey so far that you'd share with your colleagues and say, if you're trying to transform your organization, here's something I learned from doing this?
Well, I mean, I think I've always known this, but maybe it didn't really resonate or was real for me until I was in this role. Nothing gets done without the people. And you can hold as many town halls or meetings where you call edicts or you meet with your senior leaders and you lay down your expectations. Like, that is just not the way to get it done. At the end of the day, to get that groundswell, the organization has to believe in what they're doing, right? And then not only have to believe in it, but then you have to build excitement on it. The beauty is, although as much trouble that is to achieve, once you have that, it's like anything. Why have 15, 20 people try to drive a transformation when you can have 750 people drive a transformation? And so if you have 15 or 20 people do it and they're struggling, it's not about the 15 or 20 people. It's the fact that they're trying to do it, and it's not going to work that way. And, I have to give credit to my predecessor, who was fantastic at building that excitement from the ground up. That's where magic happens, right? And it almost happens quicker than you thought after, because you have really enabled the organization to do it, not just a few leaders that, have it on their scorecard and they try to make it happen.
Yeah, I don't think that's as obvious to many companies in many ways. I think, or maybe we're all learning it in a new way. So, what's our next big challenge?
I think what's next for us is, again, sadly, is a further transformation to truly be embedded, aligned with the organization, particularly Canada Post. If they want to be an e-commerce leader, what's our role in being an e-commerce leader, right? If they want to set the tone in Canada about ESG, what's our role in setting that tone and achieving those, fairly aggressive targets? And I think that's the next level of transformation, us really updating our playbook that really aligns to, we will support these Canada Post business objectives by achieving these particular goals and objectives on the IT side. I don't think we're too far away, but that is the next step.
Yeah. Well, I've learned one thing: the reward for successful transformation is more challenges, but it's great that way. Thank you so much for this chat. This has been great. And thank you for sharing what you've learned with our audience in there. I'm here today with Franco Curichello, the president and CEO of NovaPost. Franco, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. It was a pleasure.